express passenger train.
Alright. Greetings, my fellow bushy blobs of subatomic building blocks, mesons, father of the plants, porter of fuel bricks, and as always, berserk for Legos.
So as you may know, this adventure all started with me thinking about the new 2022 freight train and making one at 8 wide instead. One thing led to another, and next thing I knew, it was a success, in my opinion, and I ended up making a video about it. Go check it out. Now, I built that freight train in a single evening, which is pretty quick relative to what it usually takes me to make my mocks of similar size. And the very next day, my mind to start thinking, can I do the same thing for the new 2022 express train? Now, I knew this was going to be an even bigger challenge because much of the elements that are used for the front nose either weren't going to work for the 8 wide or didn't have any worthy equivalent elements to replicate it. So I definitely had a lot of doubts right from the very start that I was even going to be able to create anything that I thought would be worthy or good looking, let alone even look similar to the original. However, here is where I will say that with LEGO going with a brick-built nose this time around, even made this idea conceivable in the first place. Now, unlike the freight train, I started it and I got a little ways and then I set it aside as though to abandon it, not really sure if I was going to come back to it or not. But then came back to it a couple days later as I was filming for the video for the freight train. And that's when I began to diverge away from imitating the set and just giving myself a little bit more freedom in making my own design for the train nose. And that's where I ended up with a little bit of a breakthrough on the design of it. Now, expanding the freight train to 8 wide isn't anything too special. Pretty simple, actually. It gets bigger, scale looks better, and more and bigger cargo can fit. Bada bing, bada boom, case closed. However, for the express train, the benefits are much more substantial. I've had this long time itch, a motivation to really see what a proper passenger train that can fit seats on either side of the train with an aisle run down the center would look like, which would be a scale that really benefits those minifigures in their already compactified world. So minifigures, this one's for you guys. Yeah, you're welcome. So all in all, what I'm trying to say is despite this being a bigger challenge, I was a lot more motivated to build it. And with the final results, I gotta say, I am super stoked about it. I think it looks amazing.
Alright, let's start with the engine. Yeah, so as you can see, the engine actually looks a lot different actually compared to the original set. And that was because I couldn't exactly make the same exact nose piece as what they had. I tried, but ultimately wasn't going to be able to do that. However, I like this. I think much better. So when I first started it, I was actually using pieces that the set uses, especially with these old airplane nose slope pieces from the 90s. And I got this piece, and then also the train has the rounded nose. And actually the train in the set looks very much like a super high speed, kind of has that sort of duck-billed nose to it. And I think that's the first time LEGO's actually tried to make a nose like that. With the aerodynamics for those trains, the nose is very flat at the very front, and then it slopes up over. So right away I ran into some problems trying to come up with the same type of nose that is in the original LEGO set. And the first one is that these black pieces are 4 studs wide. Now LEGO used to make a 6 stud wide version in the late 90s, early 2000s, but they don't make those anymore. And that wasn't a big deal. I figured I could just use other elements to fill in these 2 slots right there. The big problem though was trying to create that duck-billed nose. In the original set, they're using these 3x3 corners with the bow curve on them, and of course it's 6 wide, but it wasn't exactly going to work for my design. I did consider this, but this is a 5x5 quarter circle, and this would work for a 10 wide train, which I'm not doing 10 wide. That's too big. And then for an 8 wide train, was definitely excited to use this 6 wide canopy, which looks similar to the canopy that is in the original set, but I think this one looked cooler. For the bottom of the front nose, the original set uses this piece right there. And of course this is 6 wide, and I'm doing 8 wide. So right away I knew I couldn't use this, and I had to brick build my own. So here on the bottom you can see that I'm using these left and right 2x6 inverted curves. So I kind of got about this far, and that's when I kind of began to lose interest in trying to come up with something more exact to the original set. That's when I set it aside, and then I started making a video for the freight train. And wasn't really sure if I was going to come back to it. I didn't have any other ideas at the time. But after a couple of days, a bunch of ideas were kind of brewing in the back of my mind, and I came back to it. I really wanted to see this through, of just making the express train at 8 studs wide. And so that's when I kind of opened up my mind as far as, all right, I'm going to give myself a lot more freedom in how I make the nose. And so here you can see that the nose that I came up with is actually more reminiscent of not those ultra high speed trains. The ultra high speed magnetic levitating trains, obviously they're doing like 300 miles an hour, maybe more, and they have that duck-billed nose to it for the aerodynamics. I don't have a duck-billed nose to it, so I think this is more of one of those express trains that isn't for doing that kind of speed, but it still has a high-speed look to it. Now the original set does use these very tall slopes, an 8x4 slope, but it's in the bright yellowish green. That's a new recolor, and so it doesn't exist yet. And all I had that would work was the white ones. So I got the bottom of the nose kind of figured out, and I had all this kind of figured out, and I knew I was gonna have this slope going on right here. But as far as this was concerned, and that's when I came up with this right here, and it wasn't looking too bad. And at the time I had these black pieces right there, and I had the window right there. I hadn't quite figured out how to get it connected up there. It actually looked pretty good with this style right here. And of course, in order to hide the studs right there on top, I ended up putting some tiles up there, and I was feeling really happy with this design. But then it just so happened that I was walking past some drawers of Legos, and I saw these Porsche slopes sitting in a drawer, and I was like, ooh, yeah, that might work. And I'm totally glad that I noticed those, because as soon as I got it on here, I was like, oh my goodness, this looks fantastic. Having that nice gradual slope across the whole front of the nose, and then of course this nice large radius on the front corner and as well up there, and then also having the ability to put a window right in there, as well as having the rounded corner right there. It was just awesome. So yeah, I am super stoked with how it turned out. Love the look, and I think it is fairly comparable to something as sleek as this, but in 8 wide, brick built. I mean, I think it's gonna be hard to do any better than this. And these Porsche slopes right there, they make the whole look, and it's fantastic. All right, so one thing I will point out is that with these two 8x4 slopes, it is a slightly illegal technique, and that's because this slope doesn't exactly line up. It is off by just like the width of a hair, which is disappointing. There is a misalignment, so you can see where the gap is starting to be right there. And there should be a gap like right about in there, but it's really, really minor, and I think for what I got out of the design of this, it was totally worth. Now the whole front face just comes off right there, and the only thing I'm using to connect it are these 2-inch bricks right there, which just snap on right there. And then of course this swings open. However, the rest of the roof actually prevent it from hinging open. Maybe I'll figure something out later on. And here you can see that I've got the trans neon yellow headlights going on right there. And here you can see that I've got the wire harness for the LED lights that plug into the battery box inside of there. Now you may also notice that the battery box is sitting down really low. And that's something new that I decided to try out. Now, when I'm building these 8 wide trains, and it also goes with the freight train that I built last week, I'm having to build my own floor structure, completely brick built, rather than the solid single bolted pieces. A long time ago, but I think I got this train back in, 2018, and I had a lot of fun playing with it, and I was experimenting with a track layout that was kind of going up and around corners and all that stuff. And one thing I noticed is that when I was running this at really high speeds and the track would go up and around a corner, the train would derail pretty easily. And one reason is that the wheel carriages don't actually pivot in this direction, which when it's going up a slope, then one of the set of wheels will lose contact with the track, and then it's only got the front set of wheels that is engaged with the track, it loses some of that stability and it derails pretty easily. So I thought one thing that would help alleviate that problem is lowering the center of mass. And a battery box is, it's got all these batteries in it, so it's pretty heavy, and it sits up here in the middle of the train. And so I thought, since I'm building my own train bases, I can actually be able to lower the battery box down into this lower section, which would lower the center of mass and keep it very low and grounded. So if you've ever heard about how the Tesla electric cars are very hard to flip over or roll over, and it has to do with the fact that most of the weight of the car from the battery is very, very low to the ground. And so their center of mass is very, very low to the ground, and it makes it hard for those cars to flip over. So that's essentially what I'm doing, is by taking the battery box, instead of it being way up here, making this thing kind of top heavy, I'm putting it way down here and making it very, very heavy at the bottom, which would make it a lot harder to flip over. So that's why you see that the battery box is sitting way down there. I haven't really tested it out as far as like trying to derail this thing at high speeds, going around corners, but yeah, stoked. So it would have been nice if I had these pieces in the line yardage green. Obviously, I have to wait until it becomes available either on Bricklink or Lego Pick-a-Brick when they become available after June 1st. At first, this green piece right here, this trans neon green, I did have just white, but at certain viewing angles, it made this look very thick, almost like it had chubby cheeks. And so I decided to kind of throw this in there as sort of this glowing design element, but also to help thin out this portion, give it more of a sleek look, because it just looks cool when it glows. So yeah, we don't have this in a lime green. So what I did instead was made it all white, and then on the original set, it's got this black with the triangle right there, and then it's got green that just continues on. And so what I did was I decided to cut the green at a 45-degree angle and then just kind of extend a single stripe right there. Now the nice thing is that you can get regular size door frames here on an 8 wide train, so I love that. And then of course I'm using the 6x6 flat tiles right there, and then I'm also using these slopes. And again, just like the freight train, I did not bother with building an interior cockpit. That's something I'll get to later on. It was not a high priority for me. So I am totally stoked with the outcome of this. I think it looks amazing. All right. Let's talk about the train cars. Yeah, these are amazing too. I like the fact that we got the double wide doors now that we can use on there. In fact, I like the fact that we can just put doors on there now at all. I think, is this the first time that Lego is introducing a train where there's doors for the passengers to get on and off? Of course, Lego has been trying to be more inclusive of all different types of people and backgrounds. They're starting to include people with disabilities more and more often. So I thought I'd bring up an interesting point. This wheelchair element is not new. It's been around for quite a while. I think I first got it in the 2018 hospital. But one thing I noticed with this is I was pretty disappointed in the fact that it doesn't fit through a standard 4-stud wide door. I thought that was a pretty big miss on Lego's part. Like it will not fit. So I mean, to me that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, especially with playability. So like kids wanting to, roll this thing around through their different buildings, or like the hospital. Like it doesn't even fit. It kind of doesn't make sense. I'm a design engineer, and part of my thing about designing parts for an assembly is just making sure that that part can work through a wide variety of scenarios. And it just feels to me like the designers didn't really, maybe they did and they just decided to not bother with it, or it wasn't worth for whatever reason. I don't know. I'd have to talk to them and pick their brains, but I think, I definitely think it could have been done. I think they were reusing this wheel part because it already existed. They would have had to make this, scoot the wheels in much closer to the chair by a plate and a half. It would have been a tight squeeze, but I think it could have been done. So I've been pretty disappointed that there's no playability in that regard, that these chairs don't even fit. Alright, so I'm also using these 1x6x3 window pieces, and that was just so I could get like a nice large bay window sort of look out of them. Lego's actually using these size windows And even though on the buses, Lego uses the 3-brick tall windows, but on their trains, because the trains are at a distorted scale, they're actually at a smaller scale than regular Lego City vehicles. The windows, in proportion to the entire train itself, they're having to use these much smaller windows. But the nice thing about going with 8-wide trains is that now there's a much less scaled distortion for the minifigures, and now these windows are the same size windows as you would see on a Lego bus. So I pretty much copied as much as I could from the original set. I got rid of the gray stripe right there because I'm using much taller windows. I didn't need the gray stripe. I got some futuristic entry lights right there at the top of the doors. And one of my favorite features is the all glass roof on these trains. Yeah, I love it. It's an idea that I got from a different mock that I made just recently, but I absolutely love the whole see-through skylight. And that's something that we're seeing a lot of on a lot of the futuristic vehicles, with like the Tesla vehicles, just having all glass roofs on their cars. So it's pretty easy to pop these out. It's not connected at this end, but it's connected over here. So having a look inside, and voila. So this actually has 14 seats. And it would have had 15, but I had to take one out. I wanted to add a little bit of a condiment station. So in one of the train cars in the new set that's coming out, it's got a bar, like a cocktail bar or something like that. So there's a minifigure that stands and serves drinks for the different riders. But I decided to omit that feature because I wanted to have a complete walkthrough aisleway that goes from car to car. And so having to add a little cocktail bar, and I didn't want to take away too many seats. So in the original set, one car only has 4 seats. And here I've got 14. And then in the other car, I don't have this little condiment station, and so it's got 15 seats. Without this little condiment station, each car has 15 seats. You can easily see that 2 of these train cars can quickly add up to 30 minifigures. So on one side, I've got a bunch of seats with tables, and then on the other side, it's just a bunch of seats facing the same way. And I've also got a little rack for bicycles, which I'm using the same exact method that they are using for mounting the bicycles inside the train. So you just hook it on like that. Awesome. And then of course I've got some computer screens right there to show destination times. Alright, so one interesting thing about this particular train, I got a green 1x4 tile over there and a black one there. And that's to help me know the orientation of this train car, because on the wheel tracks, I made it asymmetric. So this wheel track is actually recessed in by one stud, whereas this one is at a normal position. And that was so that when the cars connect together, the 2 cars are as close as possible. So here I added a bunch of minifigures to the inside of the car. And the other nice thing is that with this new set, when it releases in a couple days on June 1st, this will be the first time we get these double doors in the trans black color. So I can't wait to get those too. That's awesome. Also, there's another set where these now come in solid white. So can't wait to get those as well. Yeah. Diggity diggity. Okay, so when I connect the 2 trains together, they're separated by 2 studs worth. Now I did try and experiment with trying to come up with an aerodynamic way where this one is like curved and this one has the inverse curve to it. And so I was trying to increase the futuristicness of this train by improving the aerodynamics of it. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to pull it off. And that has to do with, the first reason has to do with how tight of a radius the tracks are, as well as the length of the car. And then also the fact that these are double jointed. So not only does it rotate here, but this magnetic piece also rotates. And so you can see that I was kind of trying to experiment how I could get the back of each train to overlap with the front of the next train. But again, like I said, because the Lego curved track pieces are a pretty tight radius, and the fact that these trains are actually a lot longer, as well as the fact that the connection points are double jointed, it just didn't work out. It was always ending up like something out over here, stuff like that. And another reason I also wanted to make the train cars kind of intersect as closely as possible was because I wanted to make it so that minifigures could pass from one car to the other in a realistic sort of way. That would have been an extra bonus, but unfortunately I wasn't able to come up with a solution. Who knows, maybe in the future. I've been finding lately that I've been revisiting a lot of my mocks from like last year and the year before, and I'm redoing them again, and they've come out even better. Like they were already, like I already thought they were pretty cool, amazing in the first place. But now I'm like upgrading them, and they're just hitting a whole new level of awesome that I didn't even think was possible in the first place. So yeah, who knows? And actually one of the things that I did try was to kind of create like a mono, like these wheels, I merged them together into a single carriage, and then these would kind of rotate on top of that single carriage. And I was trying to isolate the pivot point between this train and this train to be right dead center, but just wasn't working. So I'm loving the 8 wide train. I'm loving the increase in passengers by a huge amount. You know, you're going from 4 minifigures that can seat inside of a car all the way up to 15. I could get 16 in there actually if I didn't include the bicycle rack in there. But I really like the bicycle rack feature. I think that was an awesome of Lego to include that in there. So yeah, my favorite features, getting 15 seats, getting the bicycle rack in there like Lego did, the glass roof right there, the glass moon roof or sun roof, whatever you want to call it, just looks amazing. I think the scale of an 8 wide train compared with all the other Lego City vehicles makes a lot of sense. And then I love the front end of this high-speed express train that I came up with. It just looks completely sleek and awesome. If it hadn't been for these Porsche slopes, and if I had only gone with this, it would have looked good, but it would have been okay. But these Porsche booty slopes really take it up, 11 out of 10 for me. So it might be that my 8 wide trains, a lot of people feel a little bit controversial about them. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. Like, what do you think of these 8 wide trains? I know it's not easy to go 8 wide trains, because it bumps up the scale a lot. So that's a lot for people to have to stomach, especially if you're already invested in Lego trains, right? So definitely don't feel like just because I did 8 wide trains that, I'm not bashing on anybody who sticks with 6 wide trains. And I definitely am not bashing on Lego as far as sticking with 6 wide trains. I get it, I understand why. They gotta keep the cost down. And then the other thing too is that their target audience is not adults who care about proper scale. Their target audience is, the kids. Kids want trains too, and they gotta keep the cost down. And in order to do that, they gotta keep the scale down. And the other thing too is that they've just been doing 6 wide trains all along. And for people who have already heavily invested in the Lego trains for the last 30 years, they have an entire collection of 6 wide trains. So if Lego were to suddenly switch to 8 wide trains, a lot of those collectors might have a hard time wrapping their minds around a new 8 wide trains. I actually had that problem in the early 2000s when, I grew up in the 90s with all these 4 wide vehicles. And then when Lego started going with 6 wide vehicles, at first they started it with the industrial size, big rig semi-trucks, fire trucks or whatever. And it was like, I don't know. And then when they came out with that first 6 wide SUV, with the horse trailer, I immediately thought it was horrible. I was completely against it. But as they started doing more and more of the 6 wide vehicles, I started getting more on board with it. Now I'm really glad. I'm really glad that my mind had done a complete 180. I'm really glad that they went with 6 wide vehicles because you can just get so much more. It doesn't increase the scale of the minifigure world all that much, but at the same time, you now get vehicles that you get more playability, more features, more aesthetics, all that stuff out of 6 wide vehicles. So yeah, let me know what you guys think as far as 6 wide versus 8 wide trains. Now again, I said this in my freight train video, I'm not trying to go true scale. I think that's ridiculous. Like Speed Champions, they're going a little bit more towards true scale. I don't count Speed Champions, the new 8 wide stuff, to be something compatible with Lego City, which is again, it's a compactified scale. I prefer the compactified scale. All I'm doing is balancing out the compactified scale across the whole range of, the Lego world. Right now, the 6 wide trains versus 6 wide Lego City vehicles, there's a distortion. So that's all I'm doing. Don't leave me comments saying, oh, maybe you should go with true scale. No, I'm not doing true scale. I'm sticking with Lego City scale, but I'm just tweaking it and balancing it out. So yeah, my trains got bigger, my diesel trucks got bigger, but it's a little bit bigger. Yeah, so let me know what you guys' favorite features are. Do you guys like the glass roof on the top of the trains? Do you like the sleek aerodynamic nose on this train? Alrighty then, and I'll catch you guys on the flip side.